Perfect. So we'll get right into it. This will be a good one just to discuss kind of how to trade growth stocks in Deepvue and what are some of the things that we've done to help you with that. So we'll get right into it. One of the first things when it comes to trading growth stocks is you want to know about earnings, how earnings are historically, how earnings are estimated for the future, and what's the growth. The same thing with sales, right? And with the recent trends that we've had in the markets, especially the software names, they may not have a positive EPS, earnings per share, but their sales are growing, 100%, 150%, especially in the security space, something like a Cloudflare a couple of years ago, OKTA, cyber names, and also just software in general as a whole in the bigger basket. So from a sales perspective, you want to know about historical sales, if they're growing quarter over quarter, and what are the estimates as well in the future? What are the companies projecting as to what they're, at what the companies are projecting, but also most importantly, what analysts are feeling, right? Those are the folks that have millions and billions of dollars in bigger funds that, trade off a potential of a company. So keeping that in mind, we'll start with, some scans that we can run that are related to earnings in Deepvue, and then we'll get into some scans that are related to sales. Then how do we scan for estimates, growing estimates, right? So that we could see what analysts are feeling about the different companies. We'll do the same thing with sales estimates as well. And then from there on, some of the visualization tools that we have, like the stat stable data panel, earnings and sales lines. So that's the agenda for today. To get started, let's start with just what presets we have in the platform as of today. And if you guys have any ideas on what we can add and maybe we get a little more sophisticated, because as I was preparing for this, it gave me a few ideas of what we could add in terms of presets as well. So under fundamentals, so you click this drop down, you go to screen or presets, and then you go to fundamental. Under fundamentals, we have 5 screens that we've configured for you. The first one being the increasing earnings, increasing sales, the third CANSLIM, and then earnings acceleration and uptrend. These are very basic screens just to show you the capability of the platform. But I feel, after going through these today, we can add a lot more to showcase, how do you scan for estimates? How do you scan for surprise data, etc. So if we run this scan on the left side in Deepvue, you'll get the list of results. If you go to edit filter, you will see exactly which filter we've run here. So quarter over quarter EPS dollar growth, the last 3 quarters is yes. So this is going to give you all the names that meet this particular criteria. In this case, we're looking for increasing dollar EPS over the last 3 quarters. And all of these names exhibited that. Now, how do we see something like that? It's good to scan for it, but how do we see it? So up here on the top right, you'll have the stats table. And when you click that, you'll get a table at the bottom. So if we pick on this name, ADP, for example, ADP went from $2.08 shares to $2.13, from 213 to 288. So it's seeing an increase in the dollar EPS. So earnings per share, the company's making more earnings on a per share basis. And that's what this scan looks for. That's what our first preset looks for in Deepvue. The same thing we've done for increasing sales. It's the same thing, except are the sales of the company increasing quarter over quarter over the last 3 quarters? And then the third one, a little more interesting, is the CANSLIM scan. So the CANSLIM scan takes into account a few different things. The first one, which is EPS growth reported, the latest quarter that was reported, was it greater than 25%? The average EPS growth over the last 3 years on an average basis. So last year, a year ago, and 2 years ago, is it more than 25% when you average those up? Same thing for sales growth for the latest quarter. So the quarter that was just reported and is available in our database, is it greater than 25? And then we look for some other performance metrics. So is it, has to be less than 15% off of its highs, has to be greater than 80 on the RS rating. And then the last price is greater than 10, just to filter out some of the illiquid stocks that, CANSLIM traders don't tend to trade. Now, this kind of shows you the capabilities in a few different ways. First being, you can look for stocks that have shown big growth in the latest quarter very easily. You could look for stocks that have a history or a track record of reporting, good EPS growth over the last 3 years. So you can look for, companies that are consistently, growing and also consistently performing well at a rate of minimum of 25%. And the same thing goes for sales as well. So that shows you the capability there with respect to, what you could scan for. In turn, and some of the presets that we have under fundamentals. Another one I do want to highlight, if you go under earnings, right under fundamentals, if you go under earnings, we have this EPS and sales surprise last month. I like to run this one because it gives me an idea of stocks that have have reported a surprise. So let's say estimated earnings were $1 and the company reports $2. Now that's a surprise. That's caught, people off guard. The estimates were at $1 and they've reported a double of that, right? So that creates a surprise element where analysts that are trading the market participants that track this data, etc., including, the technical traders can get involved, fundamental, everybody kind of gets involved and they're all surprised in the same manner, but in different ways, right? Due to the data that was reported. So if we take a look at this one, it does the same thing, but you're scanning for EPS surprise for the latest quarter being greater than 20, and then the sales surprise being greater than 20 as well. So you could take any of these presets that we're showing, you could duplicate them for yourselves, and they're really there to show you that or showcase the capability that exists in the platform itself. So this one is one of my favorites. I run it and I have it actually duplicated and saved under my own folder, the earnings folder that I use. Now, how do that was kind of presets. These are made for you scans that are already there. But let's go ahead and create one that we want. Let's do it live just to give you guys an idea of how to navigate some of this stuff as well. So if I go under earnings, we have many different data points for earnings. So you could, scan for earnings dates, look for, EPS reported or EPS estimates. So if I'm looking for estimates that are reported last quarter, this is on a dollar basis, but I can also look for EPS growth on a percent basis as well. So EPS growth, let's just say I want to see, or, companies that are the estimated EPS growth on a quarterly basis for the next quarter that they're reporting is a minimum 50%, right? Let's just hypothetically say I want to scan for that. So if I were to go down, we pick quarterly in the first one. And if we go down, it will be the next quarter that they're about to report. So if we're in the thick of earnings season, which is right now, over the next couple of weeks here, if I'm looking for stocks that are projected by analysts to grow at a rate of 50, I could put 50, click add, and it filters down the 11,000, 12,000 stocks in the database down to 934. Now you could do the same thing for sales as well. And you could say, okay, for sales growth on a quarterly basis, the next quarter is estimated to grow at 50% as well. So if we add those two, now we're down to 148 stocks. This could be a good way for you to look at stocks that are projected to do well, right? It could result in a positive or negative surprise after the fact, after they report. And if usually they don't meet the numbers, they kind of get whacked quite a bit. So this is a good way to build an earnings watch list for companies that are expected to grow. And when they meet expectations, they likely are to gap up and keep going. Or if they don't meet expectations, they get whacked, and then you have major gap downs in the market as well. Another thing that you could do is you can add kind of the other way to kind of scan the market, which is earnings have been reported already, right? The earnings are already reported. They filed with the SEC, and we see an earnings surprise, etc. How do you measure that in terms of the people always use the term the street was caught off guard, or there's a sales surprise, or there's an earnings surprise. So with regards to that, what we have is the sales surprise data point, which does the same thing. So if the sales surprise for the latest quarter, let's say sales were estimated to be 500 million and the company delivers 750 million in revenue for that quarter, then that's a surprise to the analyst that, estimate. And we say, at least a 50% surprise. And now we've filtered down the database to 151 stocks. The same thing we could do with earnings. And if you go down, you'll see earnings surprise as well for the latest quarter. And then you could scan for those as a percentage as well. And you could say, show me that at 50%. Now, these are the names based on their latest reported quarter. They all had greater than 50% earnings surprise and a greater than 50% sales surprise. So that's a good way to look after the fact, to see what some of these companies are reporting, if they're catching the street off guard, and if they've gapped up as well. So that was a little bit about just how to scan for some of these. You could get very creative if you're a CANSLIM fundamental type of trader. You could see the flexibility that kind of exists with these filters. You can scan for estimates, you can scan for surprises, you can scan for historical data, and you could also scan for just stability, right? If you're looking for stable companies that are growing very steady, you could use the average EPS growth over the last X amount. And any of this data is also available on an annual basis. So if you click this drop down, you'll have two options, quarterly or annual, and you can select annual and you'll get different options here over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So there's a lot of data with respect to that. And then if you want to visualize that data, you can use the stats table at the very bottom. And then folks can go back and study some of this stuff as well. So we have quarterly earnings going back to 2019 or actually 2017 in the platform. We have annual earnings as well. And then as we go, we're building our own database so nothing gets deleted. So we're going to have quite a bit of history quarter by quarter as we go forward. But we're also always looking to add more history before 2017 to the platform as well. Nick, any questions that you see in the chat with respect to earnings, sales, scanning for estimates, scanning for surprises? I really just covered 3 separate aspects. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we keep going.
Yeah, no questions right now. Someone just said, wow, nice.
Awesome. The next thing I want to cover is how to visualize this on the chart itself. So we have 2 indicators that we've built. The first one being the DV dash, and then any custom indicator that we have in the platform. You want to type in DV space dash, and then you'll get all of these. I want to cover the earnings line that we've added recently and the sales lines. Now, the first thing you'll notice is when I add them and I'm on the daily chart, nothing shows up, right? And that's normal. We've configured these lines to only show on the weekly chart. So if I were to go to the weekly, now I see these 2 lines. So let's go over the earnings line first. So what you'll see is it will plot, the regular line going back to however, much history that we have for this particular name. So for this one, it goes back to 2019, right? And then it's going to plot it as is. So whatever the dollar figure was here, and here, it will create a separate scale on the right side over here. But now this is a way for you to visualize. Usually this, plotting earnings as is with our default setting, likely not the best way. We'll update that to TTM. Nick, if you want to make a note of that on your side, the default should be TTM. So if I do this trailing 12-month, this gives you kind of a better picture as to what the company's doing, right? Is it seeing steady, stable growth, be it single digits, right? Which is what we see with this particular company, ADP. We're seeing, ADP is pretty mature stock. It's not going to, it's not your growth stock that you're looking for anyways. They're going to grow, a couple percentage points from an EPS perspective and also a sales perspective quarter over quarter. When I toggle on that trailing 12-month, what it does is it takes the last 4 quarters and does an averages them up and then plots that particular average onto the charts itself. So if I were to go to this and quarterly, you'll see that, they're consistently, seeing some steady growth. That's why the EPS line is showing some steady growth as well on an average basis. And then we have estimates also plotted on the right side. So when I zoom in and take a look at estimates, so their analysts are estimating that this company will continue to grow at a pretty similar, rate where they're not forecasting a decline in earnings as well. So that's what the earnings line is trying to show you. It's the data in the stats table, right? But visualize on the chart right behind your price action as well. And that's the same thing or the same setting we have for sales. So if I were to enable the sales, go to settings, click show TTM, it's kind of the same thing with ADP. It's a really good example, but like if we take something like CMG, it might be better because early on CMG had amazing growth. So if we take a look at CMG and go show TTM for the dollar amounts, you'll see that this stock has seen, there's a rapid increase in sales, price followed. They're continuing to increase sales. And then the estimates for this thing are skyrocketing afterwards as well. So price action ends here. The next quarter, they're projected to grow as well. So that's the sales line that's over here. And I toggled on the trailing 12-month setting. That's usually the best way. If you don't do that, you'll see a lot of, you could see each of the sales numbers plot it by itself, or you could turn on the trailing 12-month setting, which is usually what most folks are doing. So these two indicators combined take the information that we have in our database and plot it behind your price action. It's a good visual way. So as you flip through weekly charts, you'll see companies that are projected to do really well, companies that are, their estimates are being revised to the downside. So the line will actually show to the downside as well. So these two indicators kind of take that information and visualize it for you on the charts. Any questions on the EPS and sales line? Just a reminder that these work on the weekly time frame. So on the weekly time, if you have them on the daily, you'll be lost and you'll say, hey, why don't I see the earnings and sales line? It's on purpose on the daily chart. They don't, really, you can't really paint a good picture about how the company is acting or what it's doing. That's why we've only enabled them on the weekly charts. Yeah, Peter, I just explained that. That was a good question. Have you thought of doing a rate of change number choice? Yeah, we could do a rate of change. There are many different visualizations that people could think of as well. Yes, rate of change would be a good one to show and then also making these numbers, I would say log scale as well, to show if the growth is like linear with respect to the prior data points that are coming through. So there are many different ways we can visualize it. For now, we've just done the trailing 12-month, which is kind of what most people look at. And then we'll also look into ROC and logarithmic scaling as well. Awesome. So the third way and the last thing that I wanted to cover today was basically how to get this information into the data panel as well. So the data panel does a really good job of, you could have a lot of ratings that are fundamental in nature. So if I were to look at, if we just go new screen and go to proprietary ratings, you'll see that we have a EPS rating, right, which is really, really good to use. It just ranks the earnings per share for all stocks against themselves in our database. So you'll see the stocks that have the best earnings, you could do the rating systems on. The same thing for the sales rating. We have a fundamental rating, a fundamental rank as well. And those are really the big ones when it comes to looking for companies that are top of the top, in the top 10% in terms of ratings for EPS, sales, and fundamentals. The full documentation on how we calculate these is available if you go to the bottom left and you click knowledge base and we just search EPS rating in there. There's rationale as to how it's calculated and what we're doing. Same thing for sales rating and the fundamental rating as well. The second thing is when you hover over these, we'll give you a brief description as well as to what we did. The fundamental rating is kind of combining multiple fundamentals into one to account for the full picture. And we give that from a -100 to 100 or a alphabetical score as well. So that's another way for you to get in tune with how companies, how to look for growth stocks from a pure fundamental perspective. You could use the rating system, and also, like we discussed, you could use many of the estimates, the surprise data, the average growth numbers as well. So a combination of those will kind of morph into the criteria that you're looking for. If you're looking for more stable companies, or if you're looking for companies that are growing very, very fast, or the fastest growing companies, which you could use the EPS rating and the sales rating for as well. So any questions? I see a question. Are the estimates an average of the entire street numbers, or it's from one particular data vendor? The estimates are an average of all analyst estimates. So one estimate, if I were to hover here, for example, $9.15 for 2024, may have 23 or 24 analyst estimates, and those are averaged together and then put into the platform. So it's not a particular analyst or vendor that's dictating these numbers. It's an average of multiple analysts who project how the company may be doing, and we average those out and put them in the platform. With respect to, there's also a question on how often they're updated. These are updated daily. We update them daily, and we make sure they're, we receive them from VAXA, and we make sure they're updated daily into the platform. So they're always up to date at 6 p.m. and also at 8 p.m. Is there a possibility we could see on the chart when the filters became active as one triggered? Nick, likely a question for you.
I don't completely understand the question.
I think it might be like as we add stocks to the filters, or as we add filters, how do we get to see on the chart? No, they're asking about having some sort of bar on the chart that kind of check marks, hey, EPS, like when I add EPS growth 25%, we can see if the stock meets that criteria within it, like within the chart itself right away. That's a good
That's cool.
idea.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
idea.
it's a really good idea, George, now that I think about it. Is Deepvue using FactSet data or reported numbers as well as street estimates? For estimates, we're using FactSet data. For historical data or the reported numbers, we're using non-GAAP, yeah, earnings numbers, and we have those in our database over here. So that's how we have our data. So estimates data from FactSet, historical data is non-GAAP from Zacks at the moment. Do you sort the scan by EPS rating? That's a good idea. Yes, you can add all of these ratings that we spoke about, or any of these columns, or any of these data points as columns as well. So if you go under earnings, you can have, all the EPS numbers, all the percentages, etc. There's 146 earnings points. There's 143 sales. And the same thing for proprietary rating. You can add, you could add EPS rating and sort by that to see the top stocks in your scan that are have the best EPS rating or the fastest earnings per share growth when compared to other stocks. Are there any breadth indicators? Breadth indicators are coming next month, if not the last week of May. And there are about 390 breadth indicators that we'll be working on, and we'll add those to the platform very, very soon. We're in the right now we're testing them. We're testing the data and the feed. Is there a screen for stocks that are gapping up for the day? Yes, there should be a screen for stocks under presets for gap ups. If there isn't, we will create one. It's just looking for last is greater than yesterday's close, right? And then you can also scan for gaps. So if I were to click, actually, let's go to presets, type in gap. We have buyable gap ups and Oliver Kell gappers. Let's go to Oliver Kell gappers. We see that the gap percentage, so we do have a data point called gap percentage. So gap at open, and you could do a percentage or dollar amount. So you could say, show me stocks that have gapped up $3, right? Or you could say percentage wise, show me stocks that have gapped up 5% or more. So both are possible here. So you go under price and volume and you go to gap, and then you could make a scan out of that. Where can we find recordings? Explain each feature that we find on Deepvue, Nick.
If you go to your account dashboard, it's deepvue.com/account dashboard. Or if you click on your profile picture in the application, you could also click account settings. If you go there, you have a couple options, and you could see prior recorded webinars. We usually post them within 24 hours, as well as you'll have access to the knowledge base where we don't always have recordings, but you could at least find some documentation on what you're looking for.
If I had, say, 10 filters, is there a way of showing which filter was missed on a stock I thought would trigger?
Yeah, it's kind of like a checklist system. Like you can probably in the data panel, you could set your criteria and then have a check mark. Yeah, that's a really good idea, George. Right now, you cannot really do that. You can add specific data points to your data panel, anything that's in the application itself. And if it's a true false value, we will show you it true as a check mark and false as an X. So you can clearly see if it checks off that data point that you're looking for in the data panel. But we can definitely expand on this and make it a lot
Yeah,
more
let me
customizable.
showcase that quick. If I add quarterly acceleration last 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters, right? We X out of this. Now you could see that this particular stock that I'm on, DINO, I'm just picking a random one, doesn't meet any of those criteria. So it shows a dimmed out X, right? Whereas if we do find a stock that meets one of those, then these will turn into check marks by themselves as well. So we do have those when it comes to earnings, but we definitely need to do like a better job of having more of those, kind of like a checklist mode for a data panel. So great ideas, George. I really like the other one where you can have the filters of the scan show up on the chart itself, like as a almost like an indicator, and like it will be a check mark in line. It's pretty cool.
If you have more ideas, George, keep them coming. Just email us. They're really good.
Do you have one for say $3 up? Yeah. So the back to the gap question, if you just type in gap, you could do dollar or percentage. So it's really up to you. So at open, I could just say give me stocks that are $3, up $3 or more. There were 40 stocks today. And then up on volume, right? So you could just say give me the run rate or relative volume that relative volume on a 20-day basis. Let's do run rate because a lot of people use that. Run rate of 150% or more. At that, there were 30 stocks. So these are stocks that gapped up $3 or more today and had a run rate of 150%. So you would use these two filters. Will you guys do a deep dive module soon? It would be very cool to have a toggle to allow users to display news or whatever catalyst to study gappers and so on. We're gonna have like a replay module not soon, I would say sometime probably a Q4 thing at this point. Because we have enough to do in Q2 and 3 in terms of data integrations. And then when we get into journaling and replay, like a replay feature where you go bar by bar and you can play minute bars, that's when we will likely get into that kind of stuff where news will pop up and you could, make hypothetical trades, etc. So
It would be pretty cool if in the future, if there's ever a gap of a significant amount that we can label, we can just show an icon on the chart at all times. So you could always hover over it and see exactly what the catalyst was.
yeah, that plus another idea that we had was to add a gap up rating. So that was Richard's idea to do a gap up rating, which would take into account, type of catalyst, is it earnings based, news based, what kind of surprise is there, has the stock gapped up X amount, 5% or more versus 7% or more, etc. And then do a gap rating. A few other data points that we have that are related to earnings is price percent change from last earnings is a good one that we're about to add into the platform. What that will do is it will take the last earnings as an anchor for price and then give you price percent change from last, right? And there's another one that I'm forgetting. Same thing from a dollar perspective as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we want to do when it comes to earnings related stuff and also just like in terms of studying as well. The other one is everything's going to be time series based, so you can run a scan in 2020 or 2015 or 2013 back in the day just to see what that scan would produce on that particular day. And then we'll get into, you could do a lot of historical screening that way. You could do a lot of deep dives that way as well. So it opens up a lot of doors. George, definitely if you did submit these recently, they're likely in our featured request board. We haven't reviewed that in the past week or so because we've been very, very busy with our release coming tomorrow. But definitely keep submitting them. You just click the bottom left help, go to feature request, right? Type in your thoughts. They're super valuable, and we do look at them quite often. Is it possible to have a green, yellow, red indicator in data panel as in market surge? I don't know what that indicator is, but we'll take a look at it. I'll make note of it as to what it is, but I'm not aware of that particular indicator, or I've never used it myself. Will the software have a heart rate monitor tool? This is it's a funny question. The feedback for emotional trading. No, definitely not. We did think of like putting some other elements, but those are like things when we get the basics right. We have some lifestyle stuff that we want to incorporate into the platform. Awesome. I don't see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A tab. I'm hoping I covered everything. So just to summarize, you could scan for historical earnings. That's the first thing. You can scan for estimates data, right? Future growth based on estimates. You can scan for surprises. You can scan for stable companies that are growing on an average basis as well. And you can scan for acceleration. All of the data is available in a column format stats table as an indicator, or a screening format. So it's completely up to you as to how you want to see things in the platform itself. What we will do is work over the next couple of days here to add more fundamental preset screens, which will take into account how to scan for surprises, how to scan for estimates. We'll do an announcement on those on our socials or emails, and just to show how robust we've made it a lot better, but we haven't caught up on the preset side as well. So if you guys have any other ideas, feel free to always share them in the bottom left help menu. If you have any questions, always reach out through contact us, or if you spot a bug, always report a bug. We're happy to help you out and make sure you're using the platform in the most effective way possible. And the next webinar we'll have is on swing trading in Deepvue. I have a lot of things to say for that particular webinar. So go to deepvue.com/events. The webinar link is up. You can go register for it. You'll receive a reminder, a 1 day and a 1 hour reminder as well. And we'll send you an email reminding you. That will be on Saturday in a couple of days coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern. So with that, thanks guys for hopping on. I hope this was useful. It shows you the flexibility of the platform, and I'll see you in the next one.